Next up, I have the pleasure of welcoming Frida. Frida is a licensed psychologist working with climate psychology, educating about the psychological aspects of the climate and ecological crises, and she helps organizations and people scale up their climate and sustainability work. She educates, consults, and hosts lectures, workshops, and groups together with a group of climate psychologists in Sweden, the Klimatpsykologerna. So Frida, the space is yours. Thank you for joining us, for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you, Pani, for your very interesting talk. My colleagues and I are very inspired by the work that you do with on climate and eco emotions. So I know I don't have a lot of time, so I'm just gonna jump right into my talk, and hopefully can you see my screen now?
Yes, we see it.
Yes, perfect. Yeah, and Vivi, you gave such a lovely introduction, so I won't say anything more about myself, but I will be talking a little bit about the work that we do with Klimatpsykologerna, and also with a project that we run in Klimatpsykologerna together with Folkuniversitetet. I don't even know how that would translate into English. The Folk University, yeah. In Sweden. It's a 3-year project which is called Tarapill, or I guess therapy in English. It's a 3-year project where we aim to support young people between 12 and 25 years who are in various ways dealing with climate anxiety, ecoanxiety, or various eco-related emotions. So I do that, and then I also work with Klimatpsykologerna. So I'll talk a little bit about how we're working with this. So in therapy, part of what we're doing is working directly towards the young people, primarily with hosting support groups. And in these support groups, we have a leader and then a group of young people who are dealing with eco emotions, and we offer them a space to talk about their emotions, but we also work with nurturing, I would say, nurturing psychological resilience, whilst working with promoting skills to cope with their emotions, with regulating their emotions, but also working with facilitating collective action and helping them find ways to take more collective action and engage more with the climate work. We also work towards adults who meet young people, and I would say that this is primarily teachers and people working in schools who on a daily basis meet young people, and who also in their work need to educate about the climate crisis, but don't really have that much skills or competence in encountering the emotional aspects that arise in the students when they talk about the climate crisis or educate about the climate crisis. So we also work in therapy with educating those people who meet young people dealing with climate emotions. And part of that is also helping adults cope with their eco emotions or climate emotions, because being able to meet others in their eco emotions is being able to deal with your own eco and climate emotions. In therapy, we also develop or have developed quite a bit of different methods and materials, workshop materials, different exercises, both relating towards nurturing regulating skills, but also facilitating taking more collective action. Okay, so moving on to klimatpsykologerna, which works in klimatpsykologerna, we work more widely in the field of climate psychology. So both towards helping with eco-emotions, climate emotions, but also fostering large-scale action and behavioral change in the climate work more generally. One thing that we do that I think is quite an important part of what we do is spreading awareness about climate psychology research, educating the public with that in our various channels. Some of us, including myself, since I'm a clinical psychologist and have been working with individual therapy for almost 10 years, we also offer individual climate consultations or individual climate therapy. I will say that individual therapy isn't the primary option for dealing with eco-emotions, but that there are cases when these emotions become so overwhelming, or when you have eco-emotions, but then there might also be underlying trauma or underlying anxiety disorders or something else that that makes your emotions so overwhelming that individual therapy may be a sensible option. So we offer that as well. And then we do a lot of the work we do is in Swedish, but I wanted to mention that we also offer a research-based newsletter in English, which is called Climate Psyched. So I just wanted to put that out there. You can go sign up for that. Yes. Okay. So I just need to move the bar here because I can't see my own. Okay, so what is ecoanxiety? I'm not going to go into this too much because I know that the talk that follows will go into this. But as much as Panu mentioned before, it's not just anxiety, but rather it's a wide spectrum of emotions. And I know that this is an ongoing discussion in the research community. I would say that it's an ongoing discussions amongst us who are working more applied in the field of climate, psychology, whether we should call it eco-anxiety, climate anxiety, or move more towards calling it climate emotions or eco-emotions, which probably captures the broad spectrum of emotions that are triggered by the climate crisis, ecological crisis. Eco-anxiety or climate anxiety is not a diagnosis, and I think that this is very important to just to keep in mind. It is a sound response to an actual threat. It's a sound response to an actual state of the world. We should be happy that we react with our emotions to the state that this world is currently in. And for most people, it isn't a clinical state. As I said before, for some people, it can become a clinical state. It can become a state where you require professional care, but for most people, it's not, which is also part of the reason why clinical care is not the primary option for most people when dealing with eco-emotions or eco-anxiety. It's climate change, biodiversity loss, all of the ecological crisis, that's the problem. It's not the emotions that is the problem, but we do need to find ways of coping with our emotions. I think also it's important to remember that we can have these negative emotions or uncomfortable emotions, but they can exist parallel with cope. So people with climate anxiety or eco-anxiety can have good and meaningful lives whilst experiencing these difficult emotions. Feelings are feelings do a lot of things to us. Feelings trigger physical reactions. They trigger thoughts and reactions and impulses. And in many ways, feelings, emotions give us information. They give us a lot of information about ourselves, but they also give us a lot of information about what's going on around us. And since they do give us information, they also motivate us to act in various ways. And because they give us information, because they motivate us to act in various ways, they do serve a purpose. And I think that this is really, really important to remember, that even the unpleasant emotions that we experience, and this is true not just for the eco-related emotions, but for all of our emotions, even the unpleasant ones do serve a purpose. Which means that feelings can be very, very painful, but in themselves, they are never bad, they are never wrong, but they can create trouble if we don't know how to take care of our emotions. And I think that it's important to separate this, right? So feelings they are what they are, you know, they usually they come and go in waves. They're always impermanent, but they're never bad. They're never wrong. But however, the behaviors that they might motivate can be bad or lead to undesired consequences. When meeting people who are dealing with eco-emotions, whether that be in a more individual setting or in a more group setting, in a more clinical setting or in a more informal setting, I think that it's key to remember to validate the emotions, to take whatever emotions the person is experiencing seriously, and not to, you know, shake it off, or not to, and never to say like, well, you know, don't worry about that, or, you know, you should just think more about yourself and less about the world. For many people dealing with eco emotions, that becomes very invalidating and damages the trust between that person and the one encountering the eco emotions. I think especially both working in a group setting and working in a more individual setting, I think that oftentimes, especially for someone who is very engaged already in climate activism, or very engaged in the climate work or eco work, it's essential to help them find a way of making their activism or engagement sustainable and hindering burnout, as Panu was talking about before. But I think that we need to frame that in a way that makes it clear that we're not doing that as a way of hindering the activism per se, you know, but rather helping to find a balance that actually makes the activism or climate engagement more long-term lasting. And we need to combine working with the eco emotions with helping people to take collective action. So the way that we work in Tarapill, the way that I work in more individual settings, there are like two parallel tracks, with one track dealing with emotion regulation and the other track dealing with collective action. So just thinking back to the model that Panu showed before, I would place grieving and distancing in the emotion regulation box, and then collective action in the other box. There are numerous reasons why we need to work with both of these tracks parallel. Helping people building skills of regulating their own emotions offers numerous pros. One of them being learning to know when it's time to pause and breathe. It's not the emotions that's the problem, it's climate change, climate crisis that is the problem. But we cannot always be in a state of doing. If we're constantly in a state of doing, then we will get burnt out. And this is something that we do see in a lot of in the activist community. So, and also if we're very if we have a very intense emotions, then sometimes acting on those emotions or acting from those emotions might not always lead to a sensible actions or sensible behavior. So sometimes we need to pause and breathe to sort of regulate just the temperature of our emotions, to be more sustainable within ourselves, but also more sustainable in the action that we take. I think also one way of working with emotion regulations is finding or being able to have a context where you're able to talk about what it is that you're feeling, and being listened to and feeling that support from other people will in itself be regulating for your emotions. I think also that one thing that we will be needing to work with more and more as the state of the world becomes more unstable is learning to be with your own difficult emotions, learning to tolerate uncertainty, learning to sit with your own emotions, and hopefully even becoming a little friendly with your difficult emotions. So having them, but not letting them take over entirely. But since, these emotions arise from an actual state that the world is currently in, so just working with our emotions or dealing with our own emotions will never be enough. We need to regulate our emotions to find balance. We need to regulate our emotions to be able to act in a sensible way, but we do need to also act and channel what it is we're feeling into meaningful action. And since all of these crises are massive problems, and massive problems cannot be solved by us acting as individual entities, we need to foster collective action, and we need to learn how to act and organize and act together with each other, both because that increases our chances of making a difference, but because that is also regulating for our emotions. And that's what a lot of people who are taking collective actions say. It's that they feel supported and they feel less alone when they're able to act together with others. But also in general, for us people or us humans, engaging in meaningful action, and meaningful action not necessarily being easy action, is usually something that is associated with well-being, living a meaningful life and doing things that are meaningful to us. when taking collective action and when working towards political change and organizational change and putting pressures on companies, we're also building important skills that will help us be more prepared as the climate crisis progresses. And I think that is also something that we perhaps need to talk more about, that it's also a way of preparing ourselves. But taking collective action, being able to work together with others, and also hopefully being able to, make a change, is a way of at least increasing the chances of restoring our faith in others and restoring our faith in the societal institutions that we have. So to sum it up, I would say that we need to perhaps ask ourselves, if we're dealing with eco-emotions ourselves, like where and how can we together contribute to high and long-term impact whilst taking care of ourselves and each other. Okay, I think that's it for me. Feel free to stay in touch. You can follow, if you speak Swedish, follow us on Klimatpsykologerna or check out our web pages. If you don't speak Swedish, sign up for our newsletter, or feel free to email me if there are any questions. But I do think maybe there are a few questions now. Perhaps I'm not seeing the chat.
Thank you so much, Frida. We're sending you a sort of loud applause in silent waves. Yes, thank you also for just, I guess, reminding us that all of these emotions, they can coexist. They're not mutually exclusive. And I felt that your talk was a sort of invitation to also honor and, as you said, validate some of these emotions. And I appreciate how you said we also need to find a way of moving then from the individual to the sort of collective. And that in the end we do need one another to also go through this and create the change that we sort of want to see also. So thank you for that. I wonder if there are any questions here in the room. Yes, we have a question.
Hey, I have a question. Thanks so much for your talk. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I was wondering if you can maybe explain very briefly, a little bit more specifically, what you're doing in therapy. Like, what exactly are the, like, I don't know, are you doing workshops with the people, or what is it?
Yeah, so part of what we're doing is offering workshops. We do open workshops where people who are interested can participate. We offer a lot of workshops out in school. So just yesterday I was at a high school class talking about emotional coping relating to climate emotions or the climate crisis. Where we, so with that, doing a little bit of lecturing about emotions, how emotions work, but also offering them the possibility of doing some exercises, getting in touch with their own emotions, exploring the different functions of different emotions, but also then connecting emotions to action or emotions to behaviors. And with that, also exploring how we can shift from more individual action into more collective actions. So that is part of what we're doing. We also offer these support groups that we call Klimatkraft, climate power. I don't know how we would translate. Where we have small groups of young people led by us, and where we have 5 sessions where we work both with emotional coping and or emotional regulation and collective action. And those groups, we're very lucky because we have a researcher from Swedish from Sweden, but she's based in Norway, who is evaluating the effects of these support groups, and how if they offer any regulations to people's eco emotions, but also if they do nurture or foster or facilitate collective action. Then we also work a lot with teachers. In various ways. We can offer workshops for teachers, lectures for teachers. We also offer more like study materials for teachers. So we offer materials where teachers in groups can work with themselves, like that. We also, so therapy is not a clinical project, but we are also working a little bit towards care facilities, because our experience is that the competence is very, very low, at least in Sweden, amongst caregivers. So we're just trying to educate them a little bit as well. Yeah. Hope that answered your question.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much, Frida. It's also great to hear that it's the younger generations that are really being encouraged to also explore their emotions more and to gain the language, I guess, for this. We have time, I would say, for one more question, either from the chat or also here in the room. We have a question here in the room. And maybe anyone who has a question online, please feel free to write in the chat. And then maybe Frida, if you have a little bit of time, you can reply.
Yeah, I see one question in the chat. Is the material you have in English language? Most of the material we have so far is in Swedish, but because we also work, especially with work towards university students, there's a big international community at the university in Lund primarily, where we're located. So we will be developing more materials in English as well. And that is also for Klimatpsykologerna and the work we do there. We're working more towards a little bit of internationalization. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry.
Hi, thank you so much for introducing your work to us. So you mentioned collective action several times, and I would like to understand more specifically what you are doing when it comes to that, and also if you have any partnerships with activist groups or, some initiatives that maybe give some more guidance to individuals to feel like they are part of something bigger. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. That's a very, very good question. I would say that we, yes, we do support current activist groups. We've been supporting, for example, the Aurora Målet, who are now suing the Swedish government. And when I would say that so the work in Tarapill, when we work towards existing activist groups, it's usually about helping them find a way to engage in a sustainable activism, so they're already taking a lot of collective action. So then perhaps we need to increase the level of emotional regulation, nurture skills of balancing action with pausing and resting, balancing collective action with self-care, together care, and so on. But we also then encourage various types of collective actions where I think, like activism can be one type of collective action, engaging in existing environmental organizations can be another type of collective actions. Engaging in a political party can be another type of collective action. And I think that the main thing about taking collective action is that doing it together with other people, and lifting the perspective from your own private life and what you can do to lower your own carbon footprint, into gazing up towards what we together can do to put pressure on the politicians, to put pressure on large companies to change the laws, the regulations, climate policies, that will make it easier for all of us to live in a more sustainable way, because we are living in a very unsustainable system now, which makes it really hard for us as individuals to live sustainable. So I'd say that those things are important, but then there are various ways of taking collective action. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Frida, for, again, your insights and your knowledge. There's lots of appreciation on the chat and many more questions. So unfortunately, we don't have time for the questions to be answered now, but maybe if you have time to answer the questions personally in the chat, that would be really, really much appreciated. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.